everyone. Thank you for joining today. We're just waiting for a few more people to sign on here. We know that takes a few minutes for everyone to get in. So we'll give everybody 2 more minutes and then we'll go ahead and get started. Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining us today. I love people that are already saying hi in the chat below, so welcome. My name is Trisha Dugan. I am a senior recruiter in our New York office. And before I pass it over to our presenters here today to introduce themselves, I just wanted to go through a few logistics. During the webinar today, we're going to try to keep it as interactive as possible. So we will talk through a couple things and then we're going to open it up for questions. So please go ahead and submit your questions. There is a app at the bottom right-hand corner called Slido. That is where you're going to input your questions. You can send them directly to Grace. And they can be private, or if you choose to have them be public, you can also share and people can upvote them. So just wanted to make that one note. If we don't get to your questions during this presentation, we will do our best to answer them if you send them to kearneycareers.mba at kearney.com. So again, happy to answer as many questions as we can here, but let's go ahead and kick it off today in our information session with our presenters that we have. on the line.
Yeah, well, I guess I'll go first. Dan Santiago, partner based in New York. I've been with Kearney now for about 10 years. Um, Kind of my journey to the firm, uh, studied engineering, software engineering in undergrad, worked in the automotive industry for about 5-ish years, both in the US and in Japan. And then found myself in business school. Funny enough, consulting wasn't on my radar at first. And I took one of those silly kind of quizzes that career services makes you take to figure out what's your, what are the potential careers that you might want to consider. And at the top of that was consulting. And so as I got caught up into the consulting recruiting buzz and found myself, really digging in and really interested in the career and the work, and ended up interning at Kearney, and I have been here ever since. Now my work is mostly in the aerospace and defense industries, and just kind of loving it. And that brings me to a number of places around the U.S., but also internationally. A lot to Canada, but most recently I was in Germany a week ago. So kind of that's my journey here. And then one I guess quick fun fact. This was always on my resume. They make you put one of those fun facts in your resume in business school. I am a black belt, second degree black belt in Taekwondo, and competed nationally in collegiate when I was in college. So pass it off to Pranav.
Yep. Hi, everyone. I'm Pranav. I'm out of Kearney's Washington, D.C. office. I, similar to Dan, did my undergrad in computer engineering from the University of Maryland. I did my MBA from NYU Stern, and I'm happy to talk about either schools later in the session. I worked for companies like Accenture, Cognizant, and I've worked for a lot of smaller firms in between. But Kearney is the first time in my career where I feel like I found a home, and I'll get into why that is a little bit later in this presentation. Um, I at Kearney have, by the way, I've been at Kearney for 4 years now. I do a lot of work in the telecom industry, and I do a lot of work that's digital related, which we can explain if anybody's curious. And then finally, I gave up as a yellow belt because my grandmother was not a fan of me getting aggressive as a kid. So I regret that I did not make it all the way to a black belt. Um,
There's still time. Don't worry.
there's still time. There you go. Um, so nowadays, I have two young kids, 1 and 3-year-old, and consulting is an interesting profession with young kids, which if anybody's curious to hear more about that, we can get into that as well. So with that, I'm going to hand it to Priyal to introduce herself.
Hi, everyone. I'm Priyal. I'm an associate in Kearney's New York office. I joined about 2 years ago from business school. So I went to Tuck, Dartmouth, and currently I'm part of Kearney's transactions and transformations practice. Prior to business school and prior to Kearney, I worked in investment banking. So started my career in finance and sort of made the transition over to consulting. Happy to talk about that, or the New York office, which in my opinion is Kearney's best office. If anyone is interested in any of those topics, but welcome everyone.
Okay, great. All right, so with that, let's talk about Kearney and what makes us unique. I would say we're uniquely positioned as a diverse global management consulting firm, and what that means is that We have offices in 40 countries, and in those offices, we have about 3,500 global colleagues. But at the same time, we feel we're at the right size where we can be nimble and entrepreneurial. Our client base, if you look at the global 500 Fortune companies, 2/3 of those are our clients. So we get to work on some very strategic topics for some very large firms. And we get to tap into our global network, but at the same time, we're able to deploy our consultants in a way that's most effective for our clients. We have a great apprenticeship model. I'll talk a little bit more about this later, but this is the first time in my career where I've had many sessions in conference rooms where I'm working one-on-one with partners and principals, problem solving, as opposed to just coming up with a solution and getting 20 minutes to present it. We're very hands-on at a very senior level, and you really feel that apprenticeship and that training that you get being in person with some senior folks. And then you get to take that to some very senior level CXO clients, and you get some real-time feedback. So we have a great apprenticeship model. We're committed to gender balanced hiring, and what that means is that we strive to have every hiring panel be 50-50 gender balanced. And I think Trisha can address more of that if anybody has questions there. And all of this combined, our global footprint, our size that helps us be nimble, the apprenticeship, and the fact that we're working for some large companies and some very senior clients helps you realize your potential and do that quickly. For every position in our career track, we have an accelerated path to promotion, and we have sort of a typical path to promotion. So if anybody is already performing at a next level, we have those conversations every 6 months, and if someone is ready, they get promoted. So it's really a great place to find and achieve your full potential. Let's go to the next slide. So our vision is centered around 3 C's, and these are not the MBA framework 3 C's, although I think 2 might be the same. But we first base our vision on capabilities. We do a lot of investment in building leading edge capabilities, and the way we do that is, of course, we look to the market to do some strategic acquisitions, but at the same time, everybody in the firm has goals for what we call firm building and IC, which is intellectual capital. And that's all to advance the capabilities of the firm and to make sure that, if someone did a really great project, that's something we can all learn from as a firm and apply that to whatever we're doing with clients elsewhere in the globe. We have what we call a relentless focus on clients. I think practically what we tend to do a little bit different is we go deeper with more relationships than in some of the other consulting firms. So what you'll find at Kearney is a large array of strategic or large clients where we've been there for years helping them transform, as opposed to going in for 8 to 12 week engagements at a time, but then being a bit hands off. We do some of that also, but we really try to be that partner for our clients, and that is reflected in these large relationships that we have with most of our clients. And then finally, we have a culture of what Tom Kearney used to say, essential rightness. We'll talk a little bit more about that on the next page. The combination of these 3 is what makes us unique. And this is, if you ever read an email from Alex Liu as a Kearney consultant, he doesn't fail to touch upon all 3 in most of his emails. Let's go to the next slide. Okay, so these are our values. They're I've been at many places where there's a lot of lip service to how culture is created through values. At Kearney, I've seen it in action. Let me maybe explain what each of these means, and then I'm going to give you an example of how it comes to life in day-to-day work for us. So I think for curiosity, we encourage our consultants to explore different industries and different projects. I myself started with the digital practice at Kearney. I didn't do a digital project until this year, and that allowed me to explore different things I wanted to do. We have a great global mobility program, so if consultants want to relocate for a short-term basis to Europe or the Middle East or any other geography where we may have a client need, we fully support that. And we have something called Global Innovator Days, where consultants have the opportunity. It's think of it as a competition where you get to come together as a team that you can compile and then put forward innovative ideas, and there's a whole competition, and the best idea wins and gets a little bit of funding. So that's how we encourage curiosity. For generosity, you'll find that at Kearney, people are really willing to go out of their way to help each other. There's a good bit of social camaraderie. I am great friends with just about every consultant I've worked with these past 4 years. And some of that comes with just working together, on such interesting problems, and sometimes there's a bit of pressure on teams, and that helps. And I find that when there's pressure on teams, you either become great friends or you start not liking each other. But I haven't found that with any Kearney consultant thus far. So we're very generous with our time, especially when it comes to helping out each other. Solidarity, I'm amazed always by, if we end up working a late evening, that the whole team is there. And I'm talking, even the senior consultants, principals and partners, because we're all committed to getting it done as a team, and we want to be there for each other. Boldness is something also we encourage, and I talked about Global Innovator Days. We encourage the innovative ideas to be bold, but the other way we look for our consultants to be bold is through the ideas that we're putting in front of our clients. So just about every week, whenever we're preparing something to present to a client, we step back and we look at it and say, are we being bold enough? Are we making a recommendation that's worth the time of the senior client? And being bold is, to the naive or untrained eye, could be risky, but it is truly why our clients love us, because we're not afraid to put together that, let's say, crazy idea that someone in their organization is too afraid to put forward. And then passion, we allow our consultants to follow their dreams and their pursuits, whether it's they want to take some time off for as a leave of absence to go pursue something, or if they want to take a training program, or if they want to deliver a training. And there's all sorts of other programs that we're happy to talk about in the Q&A, that brings passion forward. So those are our values. I'm going to give you a quick story on generosity that'll highlight this for you. So my very first week, my very first project at Kearney, the partner picked up the phone and asked me to create a model that estimates what it costs to build and run a cell tower. And I had no idea what a cell tower really was or what the industry was. And I had a bit of a holy crap moment. But then what was great is internally we have something called an RFS, which is a request for support. And I put one out just explaining what I was trying to do and just see if anybody had any reference materials they could help me with. And in the past, when I've done that at other firms, I've gotten just inundated with white papers and reams of materials that I would have had to spend weeks going through. What happened within 24 hours of me putting out this RFS was a partner out of Australia looked at my RFS and said, you know what, this is a great thing you're doing. Here are 8 factors you should put in a model. Here are 8 things you should model. And then within another 24 hours, that another partner in APAC looked at that and said, those are the right things. Here are 2 more things to add. And it blew me away, the time that these senior folks took to not only read what I was struggling with, but also to give me some very pointed input. And they had no horse in the race. But they took the time, the 20, 30 minutes to write a very thoughtful, pointed email back to me. And there are many, many examples of that that I've experienced since then in my career through Kearney. And that really helps stand out the generosity that our people put forward. With that, I want to maybe pass it to Dan and see if he has any examples to share here as well.
Yeah, sure. So why don't I touch on curiosity? That's I think one of my favorite ones on the list. So you mentioned Global Innovator Day. Actually, I was part of the team this year that won. So there's like a pool of about 30 different teams and ideas from around the world in the firm, and they put in ideas. 6 are selected to go in this case was to Amsterdam. Where we did a pitch competition and our team won. So and I think that's like a great example of like a real thing. But that was just kind of a sidebar. I think another great example of curiosity. It's also one of my favorite kind of interview questions because we really want to understand that that you're going to be committed to learning as much as you can about your client, about the project, about whatever it is. We just want to know that our folks have that real drive to dig in and understand a problem front to back. And I remember on like one of my early projects, it was for one of the major alcohol companies in the U.S. And I'm an engineer. I had no idea about food and beverage, let alone alcohol, other than drinking it. And I thought it was fascinating to learn about what makes up the alcohol industry, the history that prohibition had on shaping how this industry works, on manufacturing, distribution, sales. And our project was in marketing. Again, probably one of the farthest things from engineering. And how kind of that history shaped how marketing works and alcohol. And so dug in and learned all about it and then the marketing process and how you take some creative concept ideas and translate it into billboards, TV commercials, and even the little tiny tag hangers that are on the necks of bottles. So just having that drive and that curiosity to really understand the client situation, the project, how to approach it, what all the nuances are that might be driving industry and the behaviors and how everything operates. Right? It's just having the drive to soak it all in, and that's a trait that I see repeated time and time again across our consultants. I mean, like I talk to somebody and they can tell me everything there is about corrugated cardboard. Right? Did you know that in the boxes when you when the bottom of the box doesn't close fully, that's actually a cost saving measure. So you can slice off the little part of the bottom of the box when it's folded cardboard and it doesn't quite close, but the piece of tape covers it. Like that was amazing. I had no idea that that's an actual design feature and not a mistake. Anyway, I just think it's awesome, like these little things that you learn, and I think it's crazy that that our consultants are so passionate about learning all these things. Yeah.
Great.
Back to you.
Let's go to the next slide. So I think what really makes us unique and strong as a firm is that we recognize both upfront and throughout as we engage with our colleagues that we're all different. We all have different contexts through which we come to work. I'll give a quick example. You know, when I had my first child, I was on a project where we were going coast to coast, New York to Seattle, and my team and my entire leadership structure at the account said, well, you know what? Why don't you stop traveling? If we need to co-locate, we'll co-locate in New York, unless we need to go see the client. And I was blown away that the team did that for me. And we do a lot of that in a more structured way by acknowledging upfront that we all have different needs in being successful in the work that we deliver. And maybe, Priyal, you could talk a little bit about how we formalize that through work smart charters.
Yeah, absolutely. So, of course, clients appreciate the diversity we bring to the table. And I think we have a bunch of, organized, structured programs like, the Hispanic community, South Asians, Black at Kearney, Proud, etc. But on a day-to-day basis, outside of these, formal big programs that we run, on an everyday project level, we have these things called Work Well, Be Well charters, which are just these, charters that each project team comes up with to decide what works best for them in terms of their style of working, depending on who is in that team and what works well for that combination of people. And everyone's puts down, their personal priorities, their professional priorities. Everyone makes sure that the project accommodates for, their differences. I still remember one of my projects pretty recently. We had a BA who was, fresh out of undergrad, but he was training for Ironman triathlon, and that's not a small feat. It takes a lot of effort and dedication. And in the beginning of every workday, before our morning meetings, he would go on a 7-mile run, on a big bike ride, and things like that. And or sometimes in the middle of the workday, if we had a low sort of hour, he would take that time out, and the team encouraged that. The team knew that he would block off that time on his calendar because this was his passion that he was pursuing, and the team was encouraging him to do it. So he actually put down in his charter that 60 minutes of every day, this is when I'll be out on training. And he actually made it through the entire project by continuing with this training, which I thought was amazing. And the team accommodated for someone training for an Ironman, basically.
Okay, I
Passing
think
it back,
with that,
passing it back
no,
to you.
all good. No, thank you, Priyal. So I think that's the end of our sort of spiel. We do have a Q&A opportunity to have some Q&A, and I think Trisha has volunteered to MC.
Yeah, thank you all. So again, we definitely want to leave a lot of time for you to ask your questions. Everybody here, Pranav, Dan, and Priyal have come from different backgrounds, have different stories to tell. So again, if you have questions, you can send them directly to Grace privately, or you can send them through Slido. We are getting a number of questions in already, so I'll go ahead and get started here. Our first question I'll direct to Dan. Could you talk through one of your most memorable projects? And you've probably had quite a few.
Yeah, sure. No, I'll talk to one, and it's actually one of my longest running projects. It was with a client, and I think total time that we were Kearney was involved was about a year, actually a little over a year. So it was working for the government, and so part of my work, like I said, is aerospace and defense. So there's a lot of work with the government, and it was a shipbuilding project. So um, actual construction of a ship. So the interesting thing about it is that it was a technical affordability project, meaning we were actually helping the government and the engineers come up with ideas to redesign the ship in a way to save cost. Right? And so we do this on a smaller basis, and we have this division with our firm called PerLab that'll actually take products and tear it down and tell you, well, if you use thinner plastic here and you use this screw instead of that, you can save a lot of cost. But we were doing that at a ship level. Now, it does take some engineering expertise to do some of that, but we're not there to we're not naval architects. We're not there to really say this is how you got to design a ship. But this project was more facilitating the government and its engineers and the potential shipbuilders to come up with ideas, vet the ideas, cost the ideas, ultimately get it implemented, and ultimately save the taxpayer a ton of money. And so we went through all the areas of the ship. We said, all right, what if you change the engines from one type of engine to another, to a hybrid electric engine, right? You can save a bunch of costs. What if you, instead of building this part of the ship out of aluminum, which is really expensive, what if you just built it out of steel instead, right? That was a whole nother cost savings. And we went inch by inch on the ship to help vet out all these different ideas. And we ultimately saved about $500 million for the government on the cost of the ship. And I think that is one of the coolest projects that I've been a part of.
Awesome. Thanks, Dan. The next question I'm going to direct to Priyal. Can you talk a little bit more about your formal and informal mentorship since you've been at the firm?
Yeah, absolutely. So the firm assigns formal mentors to you when you join. So this is typically a senior a partner, principal, someone who isn't directly involved in your day-to-day work, but someone you can just go to for advice and is formally responsible for your career progression throughout the firm. So as soon as I joined the firm, I was assigned to a mentor. And everything from discussing what kind of projects interest me and what kind of projects I should work on that would align with my long-term interests at the firm, to what kind of initiatives I can take up outside of the firm, all kinds of advice and sort of coaching. This mentor just sort of is with you throughout your journey. But I really love the informal mentorship also, in that if you work closely with any one of your peers or your seniors, people at the firm have just been, and I've just been so surprised and overwhelmed by this, people are just more than willing to sort of reach out and help. And I think a great example for me was I joined in the year 2020, which was the COVID year. We were called the COVID hires. And we weren't traveling, we weren't going into the office because we still had all the quarantine things going on. And it was pretty scary starting a new job sitting out of my living room, and that was when, Kearney assigned me to my mentor and my buddy. And people went all out sort of checking in on me, asking me if I was doing okay, asking me if I was learning the right things and if I needed any support. We had also, I think, reached a time when we were partially opening up the offices to 25 to 30%. And so one of the people I was working with on my project said, hey, you know what? You've been at this firm 2 or 3 months, just working remote. You haven't met anyone in person. Why don't you come to the office? They've opened up to 25% capacity and we can grab lunch. And this was that lunch that I had the first time in the office was just so memorable for me because it was this person who I had never met, just known through the screen, telling me, I want to check in on you. Let's make sure you're doing okay. And that's just how the connections develop at Kearney. I've just been so overwhelmed by sort of everyone just reaching out to new hires, to anyone trying to pursue anything new, even if you're switching practices, trying to take up a new, work that you've never done before, just looking for advice. You will always find mentorship at the firm.
Fantastic. Thank you, Priyal. The next question I'm going to direct towards Pranav. So, how are sustainability and ESG concerns addressed in client projects?
Yep, and I think some of this you don't expect to manifest itself in mundane things or mundane topics that you sometimes address for your clients. But I did a project for a telecom client where we so this client consumes a lot of power for their cell towers, for their data centers. And we looked at the portfolio of how they were getting this power, and they were, their footprint of renewable energy that they were consuming was low. Um, and so, of course, the 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 goal or the ideal is to switch as much as we can to renewable energy, but there's an impact from a cost perspective. And so they hired us to help put together the business case of doing so. We were actually able to help chart a path for them to get there without really a significant impact on their OpEx. What we ended up having to do was look at their CapEx investment plan over the next 5 years and really look at maybe making a switch to more energy efficient radios or shifting footprints to data center providers that were more committed to switching to renewable energy and things like that. And so that's where I felt that I had an impact, helping them not only justify a business case, which we do a lot of, but then really as an end goal achieve something that was I felt very, very good about, which is getting to a renewable energy footprint.
Awesome. Thank you so much for sharing. Next question, going to shift to Dan. Can you talk a little bit more about the DEI initiatives you've been involved with since joining Kearney?
Sure, absolutely. So, as a firm, there's a lot of what we call affinity groups that kind of cut across all the different dimensions of DEI. So we have a proud network, LGBTQ plus affinity group. We have East Asian, Southeast Asian, Black at Kearney. We have Middle East group. So women in consulting, flex for parents, right? So along all of these different dimensions, there's affinity groups within Kearney for people to get together and discuss and help suggest ideas on how to improve things in the firm. And nobody has to choose one, right? And so as part of that, I'm part of several of them: East Asian, parents, kind of our New York office community. There's lots of different ways that you can get involved. One overarching thing, though, that I think that is a more recent thing for our firm is this initiative called Belonging at Kearney, and it's started off as the concept of if you're going to address DEI, part of addressing it has to come, or some of the people who have to be championing the addressing of it have to come from kind of the majority group or the dominant group. So it's really an effort to put them front and center as some of the people who need to be responsible and accountable for impacting change. And it started off with a lot of kind of education and awareness and unconscious bias training and things of that nature. And we've been moving more into action. And so this year, we've been putting out programming on how to be an ally and how to support your colleagues in their challenges or the initiatives around the firm in improving everyone's well-being and work-life balance and so on. So I think that's one of the broad ways that we're looking at DEI for the firm, and one of the things that I've been involved in here from New York.
Yep, I just want to add to that a little bit. So if you look on our website, there's some commitments on DEI that Alex Liu has made, and it includes things like, we've committed, I think like 1,500 days of action for our employees to go pursue social and racial justice and inclusion and equity work. We're doubling our pro bono work globally. We're using our power as a firm to advocate for fair and safe voting. We've launched Black Ventures to incubate and mentor Black-owned businesses and leaders. And we match, I think, up to $1 million in employee donations. So all of that, and there's more. If you want to go check our website, but there's real commitment behind DEI.
Great. Thank you both for jumping in and talking a little bit more about that. I'm going to shift gears a little bit and kind of talk about staffing. So I'll direct this one to Priyal. Could you talk a little bit more about the staffing model and how you get placed on a project?
Yeah, for sure. So we have the staffing team, which more so is, in the firm, we call it a people experience team, which doesn't just look at, matching you to a project. It's more about, understanding, like I said earlier, understanding your career goals, sort of what you're interested in, where your interests align, and sort of having those conversations on a regular basis with this team, who then tries to find you projects, that you'd be a great fit for in terms of skill set and everything according to your preference. So essentially, if you're part of a practice, so every practice has this group. So whether it's, our CHUB practice, TNT practice, DT, etc. So each practice has a team. And then also, if you're part of the generalist practice, then your respective sort of office team will be in charge of looking into these projects for you. But essentially, projects are matched one based on where you express your interest. So every Kearney person has this expert tracker where they put in their past experience, their skill set, and where their interests are. And so this team closely tracks all of those things. And then based on either which practice you're in or as a generalist where you express your interest and skills, it's sort of a matching process from there. I think the team is also very careful about making sure you have the right experiences. So as a quick example that I'd like to give is I'm in the TNT practice and I end up working on a bunch of due diligence projects. Now, these tend to be quite different from some of the other projects we run in the firm in terms of duration and sometimes intensity of the project also. But the team is very careful in the fact that, they always give me a variety of projects. So every time I've worked on a couple of diligences, the people experience staffing team will tell me, all right, so you've worked on a couple of these, we should probably make you look at these sorts of projects now, which are different from the diligences you've been doing. So it's definitely matched based on your practice and skill alignment, but overall, also geared towards your well-being and progress at the firm.
Hey, Priyal, since not everybody might be familiar with all of our kind of practice shorthand, can you add color? What's TNT and CHIRP and all that?
Right. So TNT is our transactions and transformations practice. CHIRP is consumer and retail, the consumer, I forgot the full form, retail practice. DT is our digital transformation, and so on. So these are our industry and function specific practices that people can align to or, be a generalist. Both options are equally prevalent.
Great. Awesome. I pulled up some of the practices and also to talk in the industry's expertise here, so you can all see that. I know we're up on time. I am going to quickly go back to one more slide, but before I do, I did see a question about culture, and I know maybe you could just quickly end with, your favorite recent event within the office. I know we have 2 New York and 1 in DC. So any recent events that you really enjoyed?
I think my favorite New York office event so far has been the ski trip. We all took a ski trip to Vermont early this year. It was in February, March, yeah. So it was, I think, a group of 25 of us or 30 of us who went up to Vermont and skied for a weekend. that was great, but the New York office has tons of events. I think tomorrow we're all going to Central Park to enjoy the last few warm days, although I don't know if tomorrow's going to be warm. But yeah, tomorrow's a Central Park event for the Kearney, New York folks.
Yeah, sorry, just on New York, I always love our kind of big events. We hold one in the summer and one in the winter at the end of the year. It's one of the events that I used to lead and organize. Like so we had one in the summer very recently, and it's great. It's just, you know, a nice party on a rooftop in New York. Everybody gets together and has a great time. The winter one, though, is a blowout. It's our kind of end of year celebration and gala. We usually get all dressed up, and I'm looking forward to it. I know that we just booked the venue, so planning is ongoing, and very excited, even though it's a couple months away.
And I will say the New York end of year gala is actually a blowout. I've been once. Not to leave DC out, we're doing a Potomac boat cruise next weekend. Spouses are welcome, so I'm really looking forward to that.
Fantastic. I know that there's a lot of great events, so we could probably spend another 20 minutes talking about it. I really appreciate everyone joining and all your time. Really quickly, we do have some other webinars here. You should be receiving, if you've signed up and opted into our newsletter, you should be receiving emails to sign up for some of these other webinars in terms of, listening more to our summer associate panel. We're actually going to talk more about the practices and how to apply. So I did see questions about being a generalist versus applying to a certain practice. So I would highly suggest you join that just to kind of understand what it looks like to come in as a generalist versus coming in and aligning quickly to a practice. We'll have an alumni panel, which is also a really fantastic way to understand what life is like if you are not, make it to partner, or what you look like if you were to, the exit opportunities, and our interview prep, which we'll talk more just about what that looks like. Again, thank you all for joining, and thank you to all our presenters for coming on today. We are excited to get to know you this recruiting season, and we hope you have a good Friday.
Thanks all. Have a great one.
Thank you.